This is video 10. This is perhaps the most difficult video for me to make. This is because there are many people who will be emotionally, not intellectually, but emotionally offended by it. I make no apologies because I have no control or influence over another person's emotional reactions. The question remaining from the last video is, why did the human mind create God and therefore must be considered responsible for bringing God into existence right here on earth? I intend this to be considered an intellectual presentation rather than a religious presentation. The resulting requirement is for me to identify cause and effects relationships rather than more simply expecting you to believe whatever it is that I am saying, that is true only because I am the one saying it. Please do not believe anything that I say to you. I would consider that to be a religious insult. A preamble. In August 1980, my severely mentally impaired daughter died at the age of 10 and a half from a very nasty form of childhood congestive heart failure. I am telling you this only so that you will realize that none of my following comments will include her and may not include you. In other words, my comments are not about human tragedy, whether hers or yours. They are about human happiness and that upon which its continued existence depends. If I am successful, God will appear in your mind in a properly formatted way. Take a deep breath. We are beginning an important journey. Whenever one sits and does nothing other than think about that which one knows to exist in an absolute physical way, one will begin to reduce one's thinking to a more and then to an even more fundamental level. The question one is attempting to resolve is, exactly what is it that is important enough for me to spend a significant portion of my living existence to think about and resolve? Soon, one will begin to ask an even more important question, that being, am I important? And if yes, why? Each of these questions is resolved by the process we are exploring, that process being the process of fundamental thinking. As we begin to think fundamentally, we begin to realize that because we are a human being, that means we are not different from any other human being. Fundamentally, we are 100% exactly and precisely the same as any other human being. Therefore, we have no greater claim to personal importance than any of the other human beings, nor do they. This is a rather sobering thought, but it is nevertheless true. As we continue to sit and think fundamentally, our thinking naturally moves to an even more fundamental level. As we look out at all that which is known to exist, we soon realize that we are nothing more or less than an animal with specific identifiable characteristics, for sure, but so is an elephant, a horse, an eagle, a fish, and so forth. We are the human animal, nothing more and nothing less. Importantly, we now realize that the focus of our thinking has moved to this more fundamental level, the level of animals. We begin to realize that because we are an animal, that means we are not different from any other animal. Fundamentally, we are 100% exactly and precisely the same as any other animal. This is a rather sobering thought, but it is nevertheless true. We remain the human animal, however. We now begin to wonder what it is that our fundamental thinking is going to next discover. As we continue to sit and think, our thinking naturally moves to an even more fundamental level. As we look out at all that which is known to exist, we soon begin to realize that we are nothing more than a certain kind of organism. An organism with specific identifiable characteristics, for sure, but so is a flower, a tree, swamp grass, moss, and all of the other plants. Importantly, we begin to realize that the focus of our thinking has moved to this more fundamental level, the level of organisms. We begin to realize that because we are an organism, that means we are not different from any other organism. Fundamentally, we are 100% exactly and precisely the same as any other organism. That is a rather sobering thought, but it is nevertheless true. We remain the human organism, however. When our thinking naturally moves to the next, more fundamental level, we suddenly realize that we have finally moved to the most fundamental level of thinking. We come to realize that it is at this level of fundamental thinking that which is most important to think about exists, and that we are now finally intellectually aware of its importance. We are sensually observing and intellectually thinking about the first difference, that is, the most fundamental difference known to exist any place in the entire physical universe. We are thinking about the difference between that which lives and that which does not. We are thinking about the difference between babies and rocks. That difference has been conceptualized with the audiovisual symbol uttered in this manner: life. Life denotes the existence of the most fundamental and therefore the most important difference known to exist any place in the entire physical universe. Life is the difference between that which lives and that which does not. This alone makes understanding life and what it requires to remain in existence the most important task for the mind function of the human brain. We soon come to realize that the baby is the different one because it possesses that single additional identifying characteristic conceptualized with the term life. The difference between babies and rocks is beyond measure. The difference, however, is evidenced by simple sensual observation. We do not and cannot sensually observe the processes of life itself. We can only observe its effect on otherwise inanimate objects. The human mind brought life into existence right here on Earth in order to give the most important human observation an identity. Life is nothing more than an audio-visual symbol created by the human mind to denote the real existence of the most fundamentally important difference known to exist any place in the entire physical universe. Unlike a rock, a baby must do something to remain what it is, a living entity. It must behave in such a manner that its life never ceases to exist, ever. The ultimate goal of all organisms is to be the cause of its life never dying and thereby going out of existence forever. If the baby fails at this task, it becomes like a rock, meaning that its physical constituents will continue to exist, but its fundamental identifying characteristic, the real existence of its life, will die and thereby go out of existence forever. Rocks exist elementally. Babies exist organically. The difference is beyond measure. It can only be understood and then explained. That behavior which successfully protects and maintains the known existence of one's own life, potentially for the remainder of eternity, is so important that it is called a godly behavior, rather than more simply just another proper human behavior. Again, acting to preserve one's own life for the remainder of eternity is considered a God-based behavior rather than that self-based behavior upon which its success depends. One's self-based godly behavior, in other words, one's purposefully selfish behavior, is indeed one's personal savior. Godly behavior is the means and method of one's eternal survival, not in heaven, but right here on earth, in reality. When one experiences a godly consequence, it is one's baby that proves that that consequence exists still. One's baby proves that one's grandparents also experienced a godly consequence. Your baby is living evidence of the living existence of your grandparents and of theirs. God has nothing at all to do with heaven, hell, angels, Satan's, or any other such nonsense. That is a religious claim and is therefore not a true claim. On the other hand, God has everything to do with why you are here listening to this. The fully understood eternal existence of your life is the reason why the human mind created God, and therefore must be held responsible for bringing God into existence right here on earth.